Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. It all began on a seemingly ordinary Thursday evening. My wife, Elisa, had just returned from one of her frequent business trips. Exhausted, she collapsed onto the couch, her handbag spilling slightly open as she drifted into a light nap. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow that filled our living room with a sense of calm. However, the peace was short-lived. Elisa's cell phone slipped from her bag, landing with a soft thud on the cushion beside her. I barely noticed it until it began to vibrate. The screen lit up, displaying a number I didn't recognize. Curious, I leaned over and scribbled the digits onto a piece of scrap paper, intending to dismiss my suspicion. But the phone kept ringing, the same number flashing over and over. Elisa stirred but didn't wake. For a week, those numbers haunted me. I tried every reverse lookup service and app one could think of, but nothing came up. Whoever was on the other end remained a mystery, yet they called relentlessly, only when Elisa was not around to answer. Then, last Saturday, something unnerving happened. I was visiting my mom, hoping a change of scenery would clear my head. We were sipping coffee in her quaint kitchen when her phone rang. Glancing at the caller ID, my heart skipped a beat. It was the same number. Mom picked up the phone with a casual, "Hello, Sonny." I froze, my cup of coffee midway to my lips. "Sonny?" I echoed, my voice barely a whisper. My brother, Dan, had a different number. At least, that's what I thought. "Oh, didn't you hear? Dan got a new number last month. Says it's easier for work," Mom explained after ending the call, noticing my puzzled look. The room spun around me as the implications settled in. My wife. My brother. The pieces clicked together in a sickening puzzle of betrayal. I felt a surge of anger so potent it was almost palpable. That evening, as I drove home, my mind raced with plans for retribution. Elisa greeted me with a smile when I walked through the door, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "How was your day, love?" she asked, her voice sweet. "Enlightening," I replied, my tone icy. Her smile faltered, sensing the shift in the air. I confronted her with the evidence, the number, the calls, everything. The truth spilled out amidst tears and pleas for forgiveness. She had been seeing Dan for months. My own brother. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. We divorced swiftly, the proceedings as cold and impersonal as our final conversations. Elisa moved out, and I cut all ties, not just with her but with Dan as well. I vowed to rebuild my life, but not before ensuring they both felt the sting of their treachery as deeply as I did. As I lay plans for my vengeance, the pieces of my new life begin to form, each one a step away from the past and a step toward retribution. This was just the beginning. 3 weeks had passed since I uncovered the deceit that shattered my world. Each day brought with it a bitter taste of betrayal, and with that, a sharpened resolve for retribution. I had been meticulous, calculating every move like a grandmaster in a high-stakes game of chess. Today was the day I would make my next significant move. I sat across from Rachel, a private investigator I had hired to dig deeper into Elisa's and Dan's lives. The cafe was bustling around us, but our conversation was a private bubble of conspiracy. "I've got what you asked for," Rachel said, sliding a folder across the table. Her voice was low, blending seamlessly with the hum of background chatter. Opening the folder, I scanned the documents inside. Bank statements, text message logs, photographs, proof of not just infidelity, but of a deeper deception involving financial fraud that Elisa and Dan had concocted together against their company. "Good work," I murmured, my eyes not leaving the papers. "Did you get the information on the company account they tapped into?" Rachel nodded, sipping her coffee. "Yes. They've been funneling money from company accounts for months. Here's the kicker, it's not just theft. It's being investigated by the feds. They're close to making arrests." A cold smile played on my lips. Perfect. And they have no idea that the feds are on to them? Clueless, she confirmed with a smirk. I leaned back, processing the magnitude of the information. My plan was falling into place. Tonight, I would confront Dan and give him a chance to come clean to the authorities voluntarily. As for Elisa, she would find out just how much her actions had cost her. Later that evening, I found myself outside Dan's new apartment, a modest place that seemed too cramped for his oversized ego. I knocked firmly, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and anticipation. Dan opened the door, his expression shifting from surprise to wariness when he saw me. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice defensive. "We need to talk, Dan." "It's important," I said, pushing past him into the apartment. The place was a mess, a stark contrast to the neat home he had left. "What's this about?" Dan asked, his brow furrowing as he closed the door. "It's about you, Elisa, and the games you've been playing with your company's money," I said bluntly, watching as his face drained of color. Dan staggered back, his eyes wide with shock. "How did you?" "I know everything, Dan. And very soon, so will the authorities. You're being investigated for embezzlement. And I have enough evidence to ensure you go down for it," I continued, my voice hard as steel. Dan's face contorted with anger and fear. "You wouldn't dare," he hissed. "I already have. You and Elisa played me for a fool, but now it's my turn to return the favor," I declared. "You have a choice, Dan. Come clean to the authorities, cooperate with them, and you might get a lighter sentence." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Dan looked defeated, the fight draining out of him as the reality of his situation settled in. "Think about it," I said, turning to leave. "You have 24 hours. As I walked away from his apartment, the weight of my actions settled on my shoulders. This was just the beginning. The road to retribution was long, and I was prepared to walk it to the very end. Months of plotting and patience culminated on a cold, overcast day. The final act of my vendetta against Elisa and Dan was ready to unfold, set against the backdrop of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The place, once buzzing with activity, now stood as a hollow echo of its former self, much like the lives of those I was about to dismantle completely. I paced near the entrance, the cold seeping through my coat, as I waited for Dan. He had agreed to meet, believing I was offering an olive branch, a chance to mitigate the damage if he provided evidence against Elisa. Little did he know, I had already set the stage for a more dramatic confrontation. A car pulled up, its headlights cutting through the fog. Dan stepped out, his posture tense, eyes wary as he approached. "Let's get this over with," Dan said, his voice rough. "Where's this evidence you said you had?" I smiled thinly, motioning for him to follow me inside. "Right this way, Dan. Everything is set up for you to see." As we entered the dimly lit interior, Dan's unease grew. I led him to a small, makeshift office where a projector was set up. Flicking it on, images began to cycle, photos of him and Elisa, documents they had forged, their secret communications. Dan's face turned ashen. "What is this? You said you'd help if I..." "Help?" I interrupted, my voice rising in mock surprise. "Oh, no, Dan. This isn't about helping you. It's about exposing you both. You see, this all goes public tonight. Your clients, the media, the authorities, everyone will know." He lunged at me, desperation flaring. I sidestepped, grabbing his arm and twisting it behind his back, pushing him down onto his knees. "You think you can just walk away from what you've done?" I hissed into his ear. Dan groaned, pain etched on his face. "Please, I was going to fix this. I was going to pay everything back." "It's too late for regrets," I said, shoving him away. "You chose this path when you betrayed me, when you both did." Leaving Dan groaning on the floor, I made my way to another area of the warehouse where Elisa was already waiting, tied and gagged, her eyes wide with fear. "Surprised to see your partner in crime?" I asked, my tone laced with venom as I gestured at the live feed on a nearby screen showing Dan's plight. Elisa's muffled cries filled the air, her eyes pleading. "This is the end, Elisa," I declared, pulling out my phone. "Everything you both did, every lie, every theft, it ends today." With a few taps, I sent the evidence to every contact in their professional and personal lives. Their secrets spilled into the world, irrevocably shattering their futures as they had mine. As the sirens began to sound in the distance, I turned back to Elisa. "You thought you could play me for a fool, but you were wrong. I hope the memory of this betrayal haunts you as you've haunted me." I left them there, bound by their deceit, as the police closed in. The cold satisfaction of revenge settled into my bones as I walked away, knowing this chapter of my life was closed forever. The sting of betrayal might never fully leave me, but I had ensured they would not escape their sins. My revenge was complete, as ruthless and final as the death of our past lives together.